Have you ever opened your banking app late at night, stared at the numbers, and felt that quiet, uneasy question rise in your chest? Where did all my money go? You didn't just splurge on a mansion or park a brand new luxury car in your driveway, yet somehow the balance keeps shrinking. It's the small, harmless-looking purchases, the daily coffee that costs less than lunch, the streaming subscriptions you barely use, the quick add-to-cart moments that feel innocent at the time. They sneak in like shadows, slowly draining not just your wallet, but your sense of control, your freedom to choose the life you want. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And I believe that extends to the quality of your decisions, especially about money. Because here's the truth. If you're not intentional with how you think and act around spending, you're letting your future be written by impulse and habit, not by vision and purpose. And the scary part? You might not notice until it's too late. Today I'm going to share a story that could be a mirror to your own life, a glimpse of what's coming if nothing changes, and an invitation to take back control before the habits take over you. I once had a friend named Min, and on the surface, he seemed like one of the most financially reasonable people I knew. Min wasn't the type to walk into a luxury boutique and walk out with $1,000 bag, nor did he wear watches that cost more than a month's rent. In fact, if you asked him, he would say, "I'm not into material things. I'm pretty simple." But here's where it gets interesting. Every morning without fail, Min would stop by his favorite coffee shop for a $3 latte. Nothing crazy, right? Then around lunchtime, he'd grab a $5 meal instead of packing food from home. In the evening, scrolling through his phone to just check some deals online, he'd end up buying a $10 gadget here, a $15 trinket there. These little moments of spending felt harmless, even deserved. It's just a coffee. It's only a small treat. I work hard. I deserve this. No one in his life ever saw it as a problem, and honestly, neither did Min, until one quiet Sunday afternoon when he sat down to look through his bank statement. That was when the truth hit him. These small, invisible choices were adding up to over $250 a month. That's more than $3,000 a year. Not on necessities, not on investments, but on what he later called financial crumbs that vanished without a trace of lasting value. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, once warned, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." I think about that quote a lot because money works the exact same way. It's rarely about not having enough. It's about the leaks, the slow, silent drips that we don't notice until the bucket is almost empty. We imagine financial danger as one big, dramatic event, a bad investment, a huge loss, a failed business. But for most people, the real threat is death by 1,000 cuts, each one made by an unconscious decision. Min realized that he wasn't just losing money, he was losing opportunities. The trip he kept postponing, the course he wanted to take, the investments he wished he had started. Those things weren't out of reach because life was unfair. They were out of reach because his money was being traded every day and for things that didn't matter beyond a few minutes of satisfaction. And when you start to see your spending through that lens, you can't unsee it. You start to realize that every swipe of your card, every click of buy now, is either building the future you want or slowly dismantling it. Min's story isn't just about coffee or online shopping. It's about the danger of living on autopilot and how easy it is to drift away from the life you want without ever feeling the waves pulling you under. Stoicism teaches us one of the most liberating truths you can ever learn in life. Distinguish between what is in your control and what is not. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but when you really live it, it changes everything. Not just in philosophy or relationships, but in your finances too. You can't control if prices go up next week. You can't stop the endless wave of targeted ads that follow you from your social media feed to your favorite websites. And you certainly can't silence every voice telling you to treat yourself because you deserve it. Those things are external, beyond your reach. But here's where your power lies. You can control how you respond. You get to choose whether that ad wins your attention, whether that moment of temptation becomes a purchase, whether your money leaves your hands for something fleeting or stays to build something lasting. The Stoics never told us to reject at all comfort or pleasure. They weren't advocating a life of joyless deprivation. Instead, they taught the art of asking the right questions before making a decision. Questions like, is this truly necessary? Force you to confront the difference between wanting and needing. And, if I don't buy this, will I actually lose any real happiness? Is like a mental filter that strips away the false urgency marketers create. More often than not, you'll find the answer is no. You won't lose happiness. You might even gain peace of mind knowing you stay true to your priorities. Living the Stoic value when it comes to spending isn't about being cheap. It's about being conscious. It's the awareness that every dollar you spend is a trade. You're trading your time, your energy, your future opportunities for something in the present moment. Sometimes that trade is worth it, but too often it's made on impulse, driven by boredom, stress, or the need to keep up with what everyone else is doing. Stoicism invites you to step off that treadmill and see the bigger picture. When you begin to separate true needs from impulsive wants, something amazing happens. You stop feeling like money is slipping through your fingers, and you start feeling like you're directing it with purpose. You stop buying for the short-lived rush and start investing, whether in your growth, your security, or experiences that actually align with your values. And that's the real heart of Stoic living. Not to strip away all pleasure, but to make sure the pleasures you do choose are the ones that truly matter. The ones that leave you richer, not just in your bank account, but in your soul. There are 3 Stoic principles that, if you truly commit to them, can transform the way you handle money and completely dismantle your bad spending habits. The first is self-observation, like a philosopher. This isn't just about keeping a spreadsheet or setting a budget. It's about turning your financial life into a mirror that reflects your mind. Before you buy anything, pause and ask yourself, if Marcus Aurelius were standing beside me right now, what would he think of this decision? Would he see it as a wise and intentional use of your resources, or as a moment of weakness where impulse overpowered reason? This single pause can create just enough space for clarity to break through. And then, take it further. Keep a spending journal, not as a tool to shame yourself, not even primarily to control, but to understand. When you write down what you spend and why, you start to see patterns, what triggers you to buy, what emotions lead to unnecessary purchases, and what actually brings you lasting satisfaction. Understanding yourself is the first step to mastering yourself. The second principle is voluntary discomfort. Now, this is where Stoicism can feel radical in our modern, convenience-obsessed world. It's about occasionally intentionally choosing the harder path, walking instead of calling a ride, cooking a simple meal at home instead of dining out, repairing something instead of replacing it. These aren't acts of deprivation. They are acts of liberation. They remind you that you can be happy without spending, that comfort is nice but not necessary for a good life. When you realize you can still enjoy a walk in the rain or a home-cooked meal with friends just as much, if not more, than a night out in the city, you strip money of its false power over your happiness, and that makes you unshakable. The third principle is to redirect money toward long-term value. The Stoics understood that what truly enriches a life isn't instant gratification, but investments in what lasts: wisdom, health, relationships, and meaningful experiences. This means that for every purchase, you stop and ask, will this still matter to me a year from now? That question is a filter that eliminates the noise and helps you see clearly. A year from now, will you still care about that trendy gadget? Or will you wish you'd put that money toward a course that advanced your career, a trip that deepened your perspective, or time spent with the people who matter most? Living this way doesn't just change your bank balance, it changes your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who makes choices from a place of strength, not compulsion. You start to view money not as something that controls you, but as a tool you control with purpose and clarity. And once you taste that kind of freedom, you'll never want to go back to the old way of spending again. Men changed, and not in some dramatic, overnight way, but through small, deliberate steps that built on each other until the results became impossible to ignore. He began tracking every single expense, not to punish himself, but to see the truth laid bare in black and white. Within the first month, he realized he could cut his so-called small spending by half without feeling deprived. Half the coffee runs, half the impulse buys, half the forgettable meals out. And suddenly he had money left over that felt like it had been hiding in plain sight all along. Instead of letting it vanish into another month of mindless purchases, Min redirected it into something that would last, a skill course he'd been wanting to take for years. That single choice planted the seeds for change far beyond his bank account. 1 year later, Min didn't just have more savings. He had the confidence that comes from knowing he was in control, that his future wasn't at the mercy of habits he couldn't explain or justify. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more. That is poor." And Min finally understood it. True poverty isn't a lack of money, it's a lack of contentment, a constant chasing after things that never fill you. You don't need to strip your life of or live in bare bones austerity. You just need to live with intention, making sure that every dollar you spend is in service of the life you truly want. If freedom is your goal, the starting point isn't a bigger paycheck, it's awareness. Start today. Look at your spending habits with the eyes of a Stoic and ask yourself, is this truly worth it? If the answer is no, let it go. Use your money as a tool to build, not as a leash to be pulled by. Let money serve you instead of you serving money, and you'll find that the richest life is the one where you're already enough.